Hello? Hello? I'm going to say, let me get rid of the slamming brake core here. Okay, right. Back, more painting. This is an exciting episode because we're going to do some of this blue. And blue is cool. Well, turquoise. Turquoise is even cooler and very Tzeentch. So what we're going to need to do is do a bit of a rebase coat of these areas. I'm going to pick a couple of areas. I'm going to do the shoulder here, which is more a kind of smooth surface, and also one of these knobbly bits down below to get a couple of different methods going on. So rebase coat it with base coat. Now, you might think, why did I do a base coat in the first place when it's got so messed up here? Well, a new base coat will cover a lot better over this than it would over the initial kind of greyish, whitish undercoat. So I'll only need a thin coat over that. If I don't cover it absolutely perfectly in recesses, as long as those remain dark, that'll be okay. Plus, it was also good to get a good idea of the colour scheme in the first place. I mean, some people don't do it like this, they just do one colour at a time. But this is paint like Fiend, it's not paint like someone else or paint like your mum or whatever. This is my preference for doing things. So let's go on with it. Base coat. So base coat is, as before, kind of mixture of a mid-green and a muted green. Just going to apply quite a thin layer of this. The paint's not thinned down too much, but I'm trying not to apply very much. If I leave a little dark line in the recesses, that's okay. Some of these wee areas here are pretty hard to get to, so I'm just very carefully dabbing the paint in. If I go over the gold, then I will sulk, but can obviously redo that if necessary. I went over the gold a little bit there. I can try to take that off with a damp brush. Not too bad, got away with it. They covered pretty well with the half kind of base coat underneath. These areas are a bit fiddly. Thankfully they're not all that bad. The area down here just needs a little bit of a touch up. A few of the dots, and that's. Next stage, what I'm going to do is some shading. Now this area is quite flat, it doesn't really take a wash. This one will take a wash better. For both of them I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to use the kind of dark blue, grey, turquoise thing that I mixed in with the brighter colour. I'll paint it onto the upper plate, but I'll use it as a wash on the lower plate because it'll go around these kind of studdy things nicely. I'm going to keep those turquoise. I just think it'll be more fun to paint that way. There's enough metallics on the model, they don't need to be studded. So first stage is this, just a bit of thin down paint. Again, I'm going to follow the same principle as highlighting metallics. I'm going to go brighter at the top, duller at the bottom. Just paint a bit low down like that. Same on the front. This is quite translucent, so I'll do a couple of coats. And it appears this area is dry, so let's go straight. I'm going to try some glaze medium. Let's see how this shit. Okay, so I've kind of mixed this in with a bit of glaze medium, so it's quite dilute. Do another coat up here and then see what happens with that wash bit. Okay, leave the wash to dry, be back. Okay, I think some dickhead swapped glaze medium for drying retardant because that did nothing as far as shading goes and just takes ages to dry. I don't even know if it's still kind of drying on there. So what I'll do in that area instead is I'll do a little mixture of a dark wash, no oil, with a bit of, that stays open, a bit of the original darker blue, and try to get it, kind of just dab it in the recesses around those riveted areas. I kind of wanted those darker. I wanted a bit of darker paint around those anyway. This is kind of, again, thin, but it's got a wash in it, so this time it shouldn't screw up. So what I will do, instead of painting it all over, I'll just try and paint it fairly carefully around those, ensuring that if it does pull, it pulls more on the underside of them. And this is, I guess, kind of useful because, sure, you want it to work well in general, but things don't work. You know, you make the wrong paint choices, you make the wrong consistency choices, you've got to fix them. In general, if you can err on this side of not working, where it puts less paint on the model or changes the colour less rather than more, it's easier to fix. Also with this, because I don't have the same after effect, the wash around the edges, I'm going to put a little bit around the edges here. I could always do more of this later if needed. Just get a slight distinction in the colours. I won't need to do much shading in general because this is a dark colour anyway. The whole plan was to start slightly darker. Let's do a little bit here, slightly darker, and work up to hopefully a nice bright finish. Let that dry, be back. Right, that wash actually worked, put a nice little dark ring around those rivets. Not super neat shading, but it's on a small, kind of complicated area. By the time highlights and stuff are painted, you won't really notice it. You've got to choose the painting techniques in accordance to the area. So something that's quite novelly and detailed like this, you can get away with a slight lack of neatness as long as you kind of pick out the more distinct points of it. So other areas like the top of the shoulder pads, or say this cloth at the back, you need to, they're bigger, they're smoother, you'll need to be smoother with the highlighting shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gamble. I'm going to gamble that because the base coat was a mixture of dark and mid turquoise, that if I put pure mid turquoise on, I should be able to blend that out pretty easily. Okay, a little bit of a line there, but I'm going to go over this a few times. Yeah, I'm just going to repeat a few times with this colour. I mean, you could mix up a colour and maybe get it slightly easier, but this is the colour I'm really aiming for, so I want to see how well this goes on. Need to bring this down a little bit more across that area. This is what I mean by what I said earlier, that it's good if you use kind of natural versions of the base colour. The fact that this was mixed into the base colour means, combined with its translucency, although it's quite a bit bright in the base colour, it is easy to blend with. It seems to work quite naturally. the direction I'm moving the paint around does depend on where I've initially put it. In general, I try and start at the top and bring it down. I'm often using a damp brush to quickly push away any pooling to avoid that. I am applying quite a few coats of this. It's quite easy to do, just layering it up, but I do want this colour to be really vivid. If it goes too far, I can always bring it back down with a faint kind of a glaze or wash of the darker blue at the bottom. The lower bit, I'm going to do it with a probably less thin down paint. I'm going to maybe paint all the studs first with barely thin down paint, and then see what else needs to be highlighted on that area. Well, doing the studs by simple layering is pretty obvious. Highlighting the rest is a bit tricky to know what to do. You kind of imagine the light's coming from above, you want to highlight more to the above of this, but the above is also shaded by the rim here, so I guess I'm going to highlight mostly in the middle maybe. Just paint a few lines. See what happens. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. It's not what I'd normally like to do for armour, but I think if I go up to the rim too far it'll look a bit weird. There would be an actual shadow from the rim, so I think I rely mostly on the studs here to provide the brightest highlights, and also this little surround of his knee death spike in the middle. That's another good place to highlight. See this, I'm not doing so much blending because working with an area, not so much opportunity for that. If I find I'm going too close to the studs, then I can just do another little faint wash around them. I might have to do that to tidy them up a bit. Okay. So, we were brave last time. Can we be equally brave this time? Could use a very bright blue and just jump into highlighting, but I think I'm a bit scared. I'm going to test its opacity. It's not as translucent as I'd like for this procedure, but I'll give it a try. Give it a try. Let's just see what happens. I'll do this with a thin coat and I can always wipe it off. Don't try to trust that. I'm going to do a half-half mix first. So mix that with the previous blue. It'll still be quite bright, but it should have a bit more control over it. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So again, I like doing simple colour mixes. I don't want to do two parts of one paint, 3 parts of another paint, half a part of glaze medium, 3 parts of a highlight colour and 1 part of which is bloody tit juice. I want something that I can replicate easily. if I need to repaint areas or what have you. So half is good. This is why it's nice to have a good selection of colours already, so you don't have to mix too much. Again, I'm going to do a couple of coats of this, really try and get it nice and vivid. This top shoulder pad is a nice opportunity to show a colour fade with quite a rich colour. And down below we will do more on the studs, but maybe just on the upper edges of them. Covering pretty much the whole upper edge of the studs. As we get onto the further highlights, do a little bit less. Just a little bit of paint in between the studs and the sort of, I guess, sort of raised, the underlying raised dome of this area. Don't need too much inside the knee because it's not going to be okay. Just a little bit of paint in between the studs and the sort of, I guess, sort of raised, the underlying raised dome of this area. Don't need too much inside the knee because it's not going to be too visible. Just painting sort of a faint line at first and then kind of blending it out. Okay. Okay, now the promised really bright colour. What I'm going to do this first is same trick as the armour. I'm just going to line the edge where I think it would catch a little bit of light. A really fine amount of paint on the brush. Very gently rub it along the edge, like so. And the same here. Whether this is entirely realistic or not, I don't know. I quite like the look of it. And then with this colour, I'm going to start painting some smaller highlights at the top and blend them back just a little bit. Okay, this is quite a light colour. I'm going to do less of these than before because I don't want to build it up too much. These little bits here were mostly filled. Now I'm going to make sure to This is more thinned down now. And bring it a bit further down, but because it's thinned it will be quite translucent. It shouldn't cover up too much of the preceding colour. At the bottom I'm going to do undiluted paint and just run it along the top there, more in a sort of ridge going towards the point. Put it here, actually blend that back a bit now. And did I say I don't like this particular surface because I don't know where to highlight to? So I'm going to mix in white. This will be now a little bit desaturated. But it should be pretty bright. So this is going to be right at the top. Very, very bright here. Quick blend. Okay. It's almost too much, but not quite. Kind of pulling that paint away. Now this is like it's going to an edge, even though there isn't an edge there, but where it's going really is the very top of this curved armour plate. Imagine if the top bit of gold trim wasn't there, the light would be hitting that quite brightly. So that's kind of what I'm simulating with these kind of wee top lines. I think I've chosen very slightly too light colour for that, but that's okay. That just adds that extra little bit of brightness there. Did even you can very faintly draw it down the side just to accentuate the armour. Underneath this will be a useful colour because now we can start getting just a little bit towards the tip of these spikes. Make them nice and sharp and pointy looking. So I did a sort of a little bit of a line on them, and then just make sure the tip has got a little bit of dot on it, so they start to stand out a bit. And finally these kind of details here, just getting the very finest edges. Sort of edge highlighting this. And there is an actual edge there. Now, what I found, one final thing is I found I have gone a bit close to the gold on that. So just to bring back that, distinction, I'm going to use a bit of pure neon oil wash, very little bit on my brush. I'm just going to paint that in the recesses. Hold the brush almost diagonally to the recesses. Paint a little bit in. Where has it gone? I put so little on my palette I can't even find it. On an armour that didn't have trim, where you'd be going to a pure edge of the armour, you wouldn't need to do this step, it would be quite a bit easier. Trick with this is really not to go onto the highlights you've already done. and this is going to get a little bit on the gold and a little bit on the blue, but really only in the boundary between them. Okay, how's that looking? Pretty happy with that. It's bright, but it's got a good colour fade there. Could be a bit smoother maybe. I could have used maybe more mixes between different colours to achieve that, but I just wanted to get on and see what could be done. Certainly looking from above, that is a pretty nice turquoise, so that's kind of what we'll see on the helmet and these plates here as well. Should build up nicely over the model. Great.